Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Premier League check-in podcast with myself, Benjamin Bloom, and the magnificent Matt SB. Matt, a quiet week for us last week because we waited for TNT week to finish in the midweek round. I'm kind of glad we did with my Ipswich Town hat on because it wasn't a good week for Ipswich. In fact, we're going to have a look at your relegation sandwich straight away. Clearly, Everton, unarguably the big winners this week. We'll go through one by one, Matt, but let me pitch this question to you and to everybody in the comments straight away. With David Moyes in at Everton and, a good result for them, could all change. And Leicester's current horrible run, are we down to a two-horse race here, a shootout between Ipswich and Wolves for that one survival place? Can you start to make that argument?
Yes, they're the two that are just obviously either side of the dotted line, and they're sort of moving at the same pace. And then when you look at the fixtures, they've both got sort of same difficulty in fixtures, so you think they're going to keep moving at the same pace. Obviously, when we've spoken about the Premier League relegation sandwich, we've said all season that for the teams coming up, the best you can hope for is to have as many teams in there with you. So that at the start of the season was Palace, Everton, West Ham, and Wolves. West Ham we thought would have enough to get away. The same with Palace, and Everton maybe just tiptoeing away from trouble. I wouldn't say they're by any means safe just yet, but they've certainly put a gap between them and the bottom four, and gaps are hard to close down at the bottom, aren't they? So yeah, you're looking at Wolves and Ipswich at the minute. Leicester City, I wouldn't obviously rule out of it. I don't think you would either, but they're certainly the team in the worst form. And Southampton, we've said for a while, kind of look done, don't they? You could put a fork in them. So Ipswich and Wolves, yeah, moving at the same pace, struggling to get results at the minute, but they've both got difficult games. It's the head-to-heads that matter. And when we look forward to the fixtures, Ben, Ipswich have got a game against Southampton that feels like a must-win coming up. I hate to jump ahead of fixtures, but this is the Premier League where you look at Liverpool away and you've just... You know it's a miracle if you get something. That's no slant at Ipswich. That's just how it is for any of the teams down there. And goal difference could play a big part as well, Ben. And, goal difference was hurt quite a lot for Ipswich against Man City, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's go through team by team. And the reason Everton are such a clear winners is because we've got 0 points from 2 games for all of Ipswich, Wolves, Leicester and Southampton. We'll start with Ipswich. The game against Brighton felt like another one of those where it was similar against Palace, where you get a seasoned Premier League team who in the second half just step it up and, just had too much. And, then you throw the benches in there as well. And, Brighton just too good for Ipswich in the end. And yeah, mauling from Doku and De Bruyne and Haaland and Man City, wasn't it? 6-0. And I think you can make sense of Ipswich losing 6-0 to Man City, when you just look at the squads and what they've both been doing for the last 10 years. So the question I would ask to you, Matt, is how damaging can an absolute shellacking like that be, especially when you go into Anfield next week?
Well, it can be. Obviously, in terms of what it's done to your goal difference, but in terms of what it does to the players as well, because that was... I know there's been some heavy defeats this season for Ipswich, but that was the first absolute sort of slaughtering, wasn't it? And that's like wow, this is the Premier League. There is a gulf in class between teams that come up from the Championship and teams at the top of the Premier League. But you've got to realise that before that game, it was always going to be difficult. And if you'd lost that 2-0, you wouldn't have been reading too much into it. It's just the manner of the defeat, but you're still getting the same amount of points, whether it's a 2-0 defeat or a 6-0 defeat. The way I'm looking at it, Ben, is I remember when Villa came up was it the 2021 season they were first back, or 1920 season they were back after being promoted from the Championship. And they had a couple of defeats like that. I think they lost 6-1 at home to Man City. But in the end, they just stayed up because it is, as we've said before, about taking the points against the teams around you and the teams in mid-table that you can sort of claw at as well. So, yeah, it's a heavy defeat. You've just got to dust yourselves down. I know going away to Anfield's not great afterwards, but you'll have got these two out of the way. And if Wolves haven't made any progress in that time, you've got to look at that as a positive, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about. So you're at mid-January and you've then played Man City twice and you've played Liverpool twice. So that's done. I've just got this thing in my head of nobody ever goes down on goal difference if you look at the history, and then here come Ipswich this season. It's just a doomsday scenario here. Let's move on to Wolves because we're filming here on Tuesday. Wolves went to Chelsea last night and lost 3-1. They lost to Newcastle as well. So again, difficult fixtures, and that's going to parlay into the Leicester conversation because they probably had the softest fixtures of anybody if you're kind of analysing that. But Wolves, they got the slight new manager bounce, but it's 3 straight defeats since. I'm still maintaining, Matt, if they get to the end of January and nobody's signed Cunha, that he can get them out of it. But they're struggling.
Mhm. They are struggling. They've got the star players, as you've mentioned, and they did pick up some good results. And you feel like they're capable of pulling out good results against some of the top teams. Not to say Ipswich aren't, because Ipswich have beaten Chelsea and he beat Spurs away. But Wolves, I don't know, at Molineux, we've seen, I suppose, just in the time they've been in the Premier League over the last few years or so, that they can take points off the top teams. They've got Arsenal at home next, and it's one of those where Arsenal are favourites, but wouldn't rule Wolves out of it because of the sort of Premier League sparkle that they have got in their team to sort of go and pinch a goal or two. I kind of feel like the pressure's on Wolves, by the way, when you're comparing Wolves and Ipswich, because Wolves are expected to stay up, certainly at the start of the season. Ipswich have come up, and it's like, we're here to give it our best. And the 3 teams that came up last season obviously went down. I touched on a second ago that Villa lost 6-1 to Man City that first season they came up and they stayed up. I think Forest lost 6-0 to Man City, didn't they? In their first season back in the Premier League.
I
You were there,
was I
weren't
was
you?
I was at the game. Yeah.
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 But they stayed up by a couple of points. So you can take these defeats. It's the head-to-head games, like that game at Molineux between Wolves and Ipswich, where Ipswich snatched it in the last minute. That's more likely to be the game you'll look back on at the end of the season and be like, that was more of a pivotal result than a 6-0 defeat to Man City. But I just find it fascinating comparing Wolves and Ipswich, Ben, because the fixtures for both are very similar in terms of the difficulty. Wolves have got Arsenal and Villa next, and then Liverpool. Ipswich have got Liverpool after playing Man City now. They've got Villa, but in between that, Ipswich have that Southampton at home game, and it has to be a win, doesn't it?
Oh, it really, really does. And I mean, maybe it's a fool's errand, looking at all these fixtures, but there's almost a bit of a sense with Ipswich, if you can get to the final 4 in touch, you've got a chance. And then Wolves have Man City, Brighton, Palace, Brentford. Although I get people in the comments will make the argument, but mid-table sides are the ones you want right at the end of the season because they're potentially on the beach. I know. But I tell you what, if anyone can commission this, can someone do a really good study, statistical study about on the beach? Because whether it actually exists as a concept or not, we all believe that mid-table teams regress, don't we, at the end of the season? And that's who you want to be playing. But yeah, I certainly think from an Ipswich point of view, getting to that final 4. One side, Matt, that doesn't look like they're going to get to the final 4 the way things are going, are Leicester. And this all now really points back to this odd managerial situation there of that they seem jolly keen to get Ruud van Nistelrooy. And we spoke about Steve Cooper's. Look, it didn't work. So I'm going to say a manager like Steve Cooper who, can be pragmatic and get clean sheets and, win games and hopefully survival for Leicester in that way. But Leicester look a far cry from that. There's 7 straight defeats, and I think if you took any of these teams' fixtures for this little double header of games, okay, they're all hard in the Premier League, but Palace and Fulham at home to become. I think they lost both 2-0, didn't they, Leicester? And I know they're only a couple of points behind, but the way it's trending, you're putting Leicester more bracketed with Southampton than Ipswich and Wolves at the moment, aren't you?
watching Leicester at the minute, I actually sort of struggle to trust them to win anything. They've been really poor recently. And I suppose we've touched on how Wolves had a bit of a new manager bounce, and Everton, maybe you could say the same now with David Moyes. I suppose Leicester, I think they got 4 points in those
Yeah, they
first
got
two
the 4
games under
points, didn't
Rude.
they? Yeah.
I don't know if they need to change their manager every month to sort of get the bounce to keep them moving away. But it does always, with this horrible run of form, it does all go back to the sacking of Steve Cooper. And I don't really know how to approach this because I don't like being. I'm not smug, but there was a sense of we kind of hesitated when they did this, Ben, didn't we? We were a bit like, oh, I don't know what they were expecting because they brought in Steve Cooper and they were above the bottom three when they sacked him. Yes, the football wasn't necessarily pretty. There might have been some, I don't know, some question marks or eyebrows raised because he'd been at Forest and now he's at Leicester, which is sort of local. But I just thought he was sort of churning out roughly a point per game and they were going to have a fighting chance. Whereas they just look so open now with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Um, I don't get it. Maybe, the Leicester fans might say, no, it wasn't that sacking Steve Cooper was wrong. It's just appointing the manager that we have is
And
wrong.
yeah.
I'll take that argument, but I certainly think looking back that Steve Cooper was doing better than Ruud van Nistelrooy is. I worry for Leicester that they're conceding. We've said too many goals, but too many shots as well. There's just so much going against them. They're too open defensively.
Yeah, and what we need to see from Leicester now is say it is going to work. Let's be positive. Say Ruud van Nistelrooy is the right guy. You need to see those underlying numbers move first because they normally move before the results move, don't they, Matt? There's normally a lag of a month or whatever before then, and that was the one thing. I know I'm bringing Steve Cooper up again. That was the one thing about Steve Cooper could still win a game tactically without the underlying numbers being in his favour. There was other way around with him. So look, we will see. We'll talk about Southampton. I know they were leading at Manchester United, weren't they, until they kind of collapsed at the end, and they were out of sight, weren't they? Forest were 3-0 up. So tons of goals in both of the games, but the end point is still the same. New manager, splat, one win all season, and we just need something from Southampton in terms of not being a record-breakingly terrible, bad Premier League team. But as you've already mentioned, they can do something very, very big in the survival battle. They can go to Ipswich and win in 2 games' time. But anything more to say on Saints?
Not particularly, because even when I try and gauge what Southampton fans think, I watch a couple of their podcasts and what have you, and it just seems as if they're all kind of resigned to it. We said a couple of weeks ago, Ben, when they brought in Ivan Juric, we said that it looks like they're going down, and it's a difficult one for Juric because if he's going to be there long term, he'll probably ride out this season losing most games, and then he's got to turn that next season into winning most games to get back up. And it can be difficult. I know the leagues are different, but it can be difficult when it's been such a negative season. I think if we're going to try and find positives, they seem to be playing well in parts of games. At Man United, they were leading for until the last 8 minutes. At Forest, they came back right at the end and gave them a bit of a scare.
Good
But
point.
they just can't do it. They just can't do it for 90 minutes, can they, Ben? And that's what it is. You need consistency just to get results, and there's no results being churned on. We look at where they are now, by the way, Ben. So 6 points. I've said for a while I think they're done because everything moves so slow down there that they'd have to go on like top half form, well maybe mid-table form to get out of this. And a lot of people have made references to Derby's 11 points. I think Southampton will get past that because at the end of the season, when you play like a mid-table team that are on the beach, they might pluck out a win at home and that'll get them to 9 points, a couple of draws, and they'll get past 11 points. So if that's any consolation for the Southampton fans, I don't think they'll be worse than Derby, but I don't see them staying up, I'm afraid.
And I think, Matt, when you get in these runs, I remember watching Ipswich in 2019, who were one of the worst championship sides of all time. When they conceded a goal, the effect of that goal was just cataclysmic. And we've seen with Southampton where one goal quickly turns to 3 in like the last 2 games, and it's when the confidence is like that, you almost need every shot to hit the post so you can just not concede that goal. And then even when they are getting the lead, conceding a goal then kills them. But yeah, go figure. Everton, then, I mean, we thought that the new guys were going to bring in a new manager and speculated that this could be a problem for Everton if they brought in the wrong manager. But not only have they brought in a manager who's very experienced in the Premier League, they've brought one who's very experienced at Everton as well. And he will just now just get points now, won't he?
Yeah, it always seems like it's around January time that Everton make the change because they brought in Lampard around January. He kept them up that season. Was it a season or two later they brought in Deitch around January? He kept them up, and now they've brought in David Moyes, and David Moyes is an interesting one. It almost brings a bit of a feel-good factor to the place because he was a legend really for Everton, wasn't he? You think back to what they were like in the 2000s. They were a really exciting team to watch, sort of far cry from what they've been like now. And then you also think moving into the new stadium, they're looking like they should have enough to stay up. Maybe this year can end quite well for Everton, which has been a club which has kind of been plagued with problems. Trying to look forwards now to August. David Moyes is back. Yeah, do you know what? Things are looking up for Everton. They've still got to stay up, and I don't think they've done enough yet. Only 4 points above it, but it's that same thing, Ben, isn't it? Goodison. They just find the wins at Goodison. I don't know what it is. Is it the 12th man there that sort of helped them get the result over the line? But great win against Tottenham, and they've opened up a nice gap now. Yeah, I won't say they're safe yet. I mean, they've got a game in hand, but that's Liverpool, isn't it? So that's a tricky one. If you looked at Everton's fixtures coming up, Brighton away, Leicester at home. I think they're the sort of games that Everton will look at and think we'll pick off some more points there. And if, as we said, Ipswich and Wolves have got difficult games, if Everton can move 5-6 points clear of those, then they'll start to feel like there's breathing space. But yeah, happy for David Moyes, and feels like I say, there's a bit of a feel good factor back at Everton.
There you go. Right, get in the comments because it all changes very quickly. And my perception today that Leicester are trending that way and they're not going to be involved in it, and Everton are trending that way and they're not going to be involved in it. That can change in a couple of weeks. Let me know in terms of the long term what you guys think in the comments. Right, we're going to kind of consolidate Matt's moment and the mouth-watering matchup this week because Matt informs me we have a brilliant game coming up between Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. And we've talked a lot about Forest this season, rightly so, because they've been incredible. And where's the table? 44, tied with Arsenal, still at 2 points per game, and we're heading for February pretty quickly. But Bournemouth as well. I think it was a statement win, a signature win, wasn't it, to go to Newcastle and win 4-1. And Iraola has trended on my Twitter all weekend as he's linked with every big job, and Cliver has a hat trick in the game. And with our EFL hats on, Matt, we saw these two teams duking it out for second spot in the Championship just a few weeks ago. Start off on Bournemouth and then talk to me about the matchup coming up.
It is funny, isn't it? 3 years ago, it was April 2022. This was a big match to get promoted in the Championship. Both have kicked on, and we've spoken a lot about Forest. So let's give Bournemouth their credit. Bournemouth have been fantastic, and it almost doesn't surprise me anymore when they win 4-1 at Newcastle. I'm just like, do you know what? They're capable of that, aren't they? And
that format.
Well, no, I didn't predict that, of course, but it's incredible. I mean, Clivert deserves a lot of credit. I was speaking to Ben. I love the commentary of a hat trick for the son of Patrick. You could also add that getting 2 goals right at the end was the cherry on top. Ben,
very nice.
They've been great. They've been great, haven't they? Do you know what as well? Actually, I mean, first of all, credit to all these teams in the top half. Because we've got so many that we've mentioned before that have come up from the Championship and really kicked on, and that's kind of pushed Tottenham and Manchester United down into the bottom half. But Bournemouth, there was a lot said a few weeks ago that they're missing forward players because was it Evan Nilsson that's injured? I think it's Enis Unal as well, and obviously they lost Solanke. We've mentioned that they've done a great job replacing replacing Solanke's goals. But yeah, they've got a couple of players missing at the moment. I know everyone has injuries, but in particular forward players. But to then go and beat Newcastle, and Newcastle are pretty much the best formed team in the Premier League recently. They've been dishing out 4-0s and 5-0. So to go and turn them over, incredible. 36 goals scored. So they've scored more than Forest this season as well, Bournemouth, and 3 points off the top four. So while Forest are ahead of them and are grabbing the headlines, maybe, just maybe, Ben, imagine this, but Forest and Bournemouth both finish in the Champions League this season. Can you imagine? Third and fourth.
No, but it'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? I think what I like as well, Matt, is the kind of humility of Bournemouth's recruitment, where I think they sell it to players that you can come to us, get yourself into the Premier League, you help us, we'll help you, and we're seeing like with the likes of Clivert. Maybe I know he's the form player, but
Mm.
who's the lad at fullback who everyone, Kirkes, who everyone's
Mm.
loving as well, and one of the centre backs is really highly rated as well, and they're all of these kind of profile of players where it's almost like, okay, ultimately you're thinking Champions League, but it's a strategy that's working a charm at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like the setup of Bournemouth. Some of the players they've brought in, Kepa, an experienced head there, because obviously I really like Neto, but I think Kepa's come in and done a solid job. Semenyo, I mean, as Championship fans, we really rated him, didn't we,
Brilliant.
at
Yeah.
Bristol City? But he's been absolutely fantastic for Bournemouth, and I could see him carrying on this trend. He'll be getting looked at by the clubs at the very, very top. And Cliver, good to see him following in his dad's footsteps. There's just so much to like about Bournemouth, isn't there? You're just such a solid team. And I say this every time I do the predictions with Sophie, the weekly predictions. I say I just don't like backing Bournemouth to lose, because even though Newcastle were understandably favourites at home to Bournemouth last time, like I say, Bournemouth are just always so dangerous, pretty tight at the back, but just always seem to carry that threat, and they're just relentless as well. They don't. Go on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, you said the word relentless, and it just remembered. I was doing Blue Monday after Ipswich lost to Bournemouth, and one of our guys, Joe, was sat behind the goal, and we've heard the numbers about Bournemouth's pressing and Iraola's pressing, but he said watching it from the point of view where they're coming towards you, apparently it's just ridiculous how relentless they are in terms
Mm.
of right inside the penalty box and 4 and 5 players. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
No, but you're right. It's scary. They are scary going forwards, because they're just so well drilled that they're relentless. They keep going. Whether it's, you think, the Ipswich game where the equaliser was right at the end, but then they thought, no, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going for the winner. And the same at Newcastle. They were 2-1 up, and any team really 2-1 up at Newcastle in the final minutes would think, we'll sit back and we'll just sort of absorb this. But yeah, I suppose you could call it counter-attacking as well, but they're always just going forwards to get that extra goal and just really punish teams, aren't they? So to win 4-1 away at Newcastle, yeah, like I say, I think they're really dangerous going forwards, and there's no sort of stopping Bournemouth at the minute. They are relentless. So yeah, tees up nicely, doesn't it, for Bournemouth at home to Forest, which has always been quite an interesting game. I think Forest fans say that Bournemouth are a little bit of a bogey team, but I think they drew, because these fixtures coming up this weekend are from the opening day of the season, if I'm right.
Oh
So I think
really?
they,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they drew 1-1 on the opening day of the season, and yeah, it's interesting to see them, coming back around to playing each other again after both been brilliant since they last played each other. Sets up really nicely, doesn't it? Forest in third place and Bournemouth in seventh place. Yeah, like I say, 3 points off that top four for Bournemouth, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, it's difficult because you use the word unstoppable, but it feels like they're both unstoppable
Yeah.
at the moment. You'd be struggling to back either of them to lose, especially with Bournemouth having the home advantage as well. I know you're going to have predictions coming out with Sophie on Premier League, but don't tell me outcome. But it's going to be a good clash of styles as well, because Forest have been brilliant this season at absorbing and great defensive side, Forest, and we think Bournemouth are a great pressing side. But what is there going to be to press? Do you know what I mean? If Forest just go, well, okay, if we sit here,
Mm.
what are you going to press? There's no
Mm.
gaps, So could be a really interesting, probably above my pay grade tactically,
Mm.
but could be a really interesting watch, couldn't it?
Yeah. So without spoiling my prediction, what I would say about this game is, yeah, it's an unstoppable force versus an immovable object.
Understood. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, very, very hard to separate the two. And I wouldn't be too surprised if they draw again. But what's to say that I'm predicting that, hey, Ben?
Everything you just said in the last 15 seconds, Matt. Probably get involved in the comments. We'd love to hear from Bournemouth fans. We've heard from Forest fans plenty this season, and bring it on because we're primarily EFL YouTubers here, and we love to see these EFL teams coming up and smashing through that glass ceiling. But particularly if you're a Bournemouth fan, talk to us about this last 10 games and the brilliant recruitment and the amazing pressing and the opportunity to, can it be top 8, top 6? I'm not all in on Matt's top 4 finish there, but hey,
Mm.
I've been wrong many times in terms of Forest this season, so why not be wrong again about Bournemouth? That is your Premier League check-in podcast for one more week. Matt, my partner in crime on this one, what can people expect to see if they head over to the Matt SB channel? What's going on over there?
You can maybe find the prediction for the Forest Bournemouth game over there. Yeah, so
Draw!
Premier League and Championship predictions with Sophie. Myself and Ben have recorded our League One predictions for this week. Do get involved. Like we said, there's a battle of the billionaires going on down in League One, which is always quite fun to see. Yeah, lots of content. Coventry City have got quite a few games on at the minute, so I'll be covering some of that as well. You might see Ben at a Coventry game soon. So yeah,
That is
get involved.
absolutely not the battle of the billionaires. We are very humble in our work here, aren't we, me and Matt?
That's it. We are. We are. But yeah, get involved, and yeah, you might see a bit more Ben over on my channel as well.
What could possibly go wrong? And we will see you next week for another episode of the Premier League Check-In Podcast.